Charles, I think we got some legitimate outrage brewing over these judges who are seemingly going wild. You are in yet another undisclosed international location. How you doing there, Charles?
I'm fully rested, although I got very little sleep on 2 long flights, and I won't say exactly where I am, but I'm in a place I've been before. It's very far away from you, and
Do you know,
nonetheless, I've had a chance to think about this latest outrage, and there's a few things that I like to say just off the top, if it's okay. The first
absolutely.
is the first is that, and I hope you're well, by the way. First is that the second anybody is killed with a gun, um, Chuck Schumer and the progressive elite is all over this idea that you've got to eliminate guns. So no outrage over the knife, right? The left in England actually they're going down a track of trying to eliminate the ability for individuals to have knives, with the next step probably being that you got to eat only mush. You can't
Right.
use a fork. You probably got to use your hands to
Steakhouses
eat
closed.
mush. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that Obama, and I am going to pick on him because he is a world figure, a historic figure in American history. And that idiot, his wife, and he gave some podcast. I think he went on her podcast, or they talked about how the dangers of being a black man. That Michelle is glad that she didn't have a son, in part because she was just dissing Obama and saying that he turned out to be like Obama. But there is this whole narrative that it's dangerous to be a black man. That black men. There was one poster I saw of a policeman sitting next, a white policeman sitting next to a little black kid on a stool at one of those Norman Rockwell style diners. And the poster, the caption, the police says to this little kid who's like 5, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" And the kid says, "Alive." So there's this whole narrative about it's dangerous to be a black boy. Well, I think it's irresponsible, to let this guy, to give him the multiple second chances that this guy got, this murderer, this ghoul, this fiend. There's nothing good about what happened with this decision and the multiple other decisions where he was, given a pass, he was arrested, or maybe he wasn't arrested in a fight, or he was arrested and, temporarily set in jail and released on a low bail. There's nothing humanitarian about that. And where is Barack Obama now? If he really wanted to be, go down in history as a transformative figure, he would be standing up and say, on the social justice movement that I've spent the bulk of my life with, as he has in theory spent the bulk of his life with that when he isn't mooching off rich donors to have 4 mansions and fly private. There errors are happen in this social justice movement, and this is one of them. If he were to stand up and say that, he would become a towering figure in American history. Instead, as far as I know, he said nothing. And the people on the left who are shamefully trying to make, after in the beginning, reporting nothing about this. I mean, if you done it, the shoe on the other foot, if a white preppy, for example, at Yale,
Yeah.
had been out at a bar and knifed a black hoodlum, a black woman in the hood in New Haven on a whim at 9:30 p.m. What do you think would be going on across the country now? We would have had riots far worse than George Floyd. We would have had, probably had to have National Guard troops out to enforce safety. Instead, the mainstream press refuses to report on this. And it takes somebody, I've got my issues with that guy Berenson, but he has a piece out pointing out that an overwhelming majority of violent crimes that are reported, many are not reported, but the violent crimes that are reported involve black males. And they involve black males killing predominantly other black males in disproportionate number to their percentage in society. So we have a violence problem in this country. We have a mainstream media that is a propaganda. I mean, the fact that they did not report on this for days, and then their opening salvo was in coordinated fashion to say, well, we decry the racist perspectives of people who are looking at this incident. This is further signs of racism. I mean, the people, the editorial boards at these mainstream places and academia and Barack Obama and these people in BLM and whatever, they have blood on their hands now. And I hope that this poor girl's death does not go in vain. I hope there's something positive that happens out of this. But the race hustlers from Obama to Hakeem Jeffries to there are plenty of white liberal women who are race hustlers as well. All these people have blood on their hands now. And there needs to be positive reform coming out of it.
You're right, Charles. I mean, it was strange to see. Barack Obama has said, it's not strange to see, it's obvious. He's said nothing about it at all. This is what Obama wanted, obviously. When part of the reason Barack Obama became president, I think, is because race relations in the United States in 2008 had reached kind of an all-time peaceful high where everybody was like, you know what? We're going to live up to this. All men are created equal, all people are created equal, and judge somebody by the content of the character rather than the color of their skin. But there's been a conditioning. I mean, that was 17 years ago, Charles. So somebody who was a little tiny child at that time is now an adult, and people who weren't born then are now teenagers. And you and I experienced this firsthand, marauding losers rolling around New York City who look at you and look at me and say, two old white guys, let me intimidate them and show them who's boss, call them the N-word. There's guys who attacked me outside of Twitter. We're saying, hey, N-word, go home. This is my plantation. I was like, what the hell are you talking about, 20-year-old moron?
Yeah. Well, and think about that moment we were in after George Floyd, where that certified moron who wrote that book, White Fragility, was pushing on J.P. Morgan on down. The big Fortune 500 companies committed billions of dollars to BLM. People are going through struggle sessions, at large companies. If there were white men were discriminated against in hiring and promotion. People with, seriously suspect qualifications were given very big jobs. We just went way too far here. This person deserves, Frank, he deserves the death penalty. And I hope there is a death penalty in North Carolina. I don't know if there is one or not. But I know you've been traveling, so just to fill you in, Pam Bondi has now risen up with federal charges because this happened on public transport. So I guess it's a charge that is qualifying this guy for capital punishment. For him to say on tape, and I won't watch the tape, but you described it to me and others have described it to me, for him to say, I got the white girl, what, and the way in which he did, this poor person was just on the train, and who was going to go on that train again? I certainly wouldn't go anywhere near that train. But I mean,
it's just as likely to happen on the subway in New York City or the Long Island Railroad.
Absolutely.
Or New Jersey
Transit. It has happened.
Yeah.
It has happened. And on the subject you raised, when you and I used to do those walk-arounds, and I would walk, I guess, a mile or so up from my apartment to yours, typically up 7th Avenue. I remember there was one time, I have a pretty good sense of depth perception and what's going on around me. And I look eyes forward typically, but I sensed, movement behind me and a presence. And I turned around. There was this little 14 or 15-year-old kid who'd come up quickly, either on a bike or a skateboard. And I turned around suddenly and frightened him. But I suspect he was about to whack me on the head or something. And there is that, I forget what they call it, but there is that sort of quote game, where in the summer,
the knockout game, they call it.
Right, the knockout game. So, there needs to be, as I say, I hope something good comes out of this. That there's a real introspection. I believe from Trump's reaction, I think we can be very, very certain that this is not going to go unpunished. But it needs to be much more than that. I tell the story I've told you, and I think I've told the crowd of, I come home, and I think my eldest was maybe 14 or 15, and sitting on the roof with his friend, at like 6 o'clock in the evening, drinking beer, which he shouldn't have been doing, but on top of a sloped roof, which fell down to asphalt, an asphalt driveway. So one slip at either one of those could have been crippled for life or worse. And I had to, I said, get off the effing roof. And an argument ensued, which was quickly won by me. And you need at that impressionable age, 14, 15, 12 even, through maybe even to your early 20s, you need an authority figure around who cares about the actual child and can scare some common sense into the child without, no violence was required. But, and this is, I think, somebody who never had that, or worse, who could just simply be a psychopath.
Oh, no, they said that his father was a recidivist criminal as well.
Okay.
Information came out about his half-brother who was shooting people and doing all kinds of things. Charles, not to redirect, but you said something that caused me to remember an incident that I want to ask you about your memory. In 1993, This was almost coincident with the O.J. murder. And that's another, O.J. is obviously black. The wife and the boyfriend were white. Personally don't remember, despite how horrible this was, this guy Colin Ferguson went on to the Long Island Railroad and just started shooting and shot, I think, 19 people or something. 6 of them died. And he was definitely black. And I remember notably there was an Irish guy who was shot who his mother then ran for Congress or something. I think most of the victims were white, but I don't remember anybody on either side making any comments about race in either this or the O.J. thing in 1993. And yet now, every single thing that happens, the first discussion is about race. Do you remember any of the details? It's O'Connor, Blum, McIntyre. These were Jewish and Irish people. I remember the victims were white.
Yeah. I don't remember the details of that incident 22 years ago very well, but I take your point. And, going back to the notion of judges gone wild, the idea that, justice is no longer blind, that in certain districts, Washington, D.C. is one example. If it's a black defendant and you convene a jury, it's going to be in D.C., majority black. And you're going to have people just say, I don't care about the facts of this case, as Ketanji Brown Jackson likes to say. I'm just going to give you my views on what I think is the appropriate way to spin this. That's a kangaroo court if you're a white person. And, this precedent of what's going on here with the Lisa Cook thing, with multiple other decisions we're seeing, principally from Biden and Clinton and Obama appointed judges who get put in various positions or, by at a lower level by political lefties, progressive groups get installed and then proceed to make decisions that have nothing to do with the case, but are just based on animus against white people or animus against history, or the history that they believe they remember. This is just outrageous stuff. And, there needs to be a literal house cleaning of the judiciary and of the legal profession.
Yeah. Well, and so I think that's a good leaping off point for some details about some of these things, because I've been finding, a lot of people have been finding all kinds of information, but, it's a little complicated, and there was some incorrect information. I even put out some information that I've learned wasn't fully correct. So Teresa Stokes, the person who a lot of people have been saying is the judge in this case in North Carolina, she's not a judge. She is a magistrate. And people have been, maybe rightly shocked that she's not a lawyer, meaning she is not a bar member. Some people have even said that she hasn't been to law school. Now, I don't think that's correct. I've seen evidence that she's gone to Cooley Law School, which has some esteemed alumnus, including Michael Cohen. He went there. And a lot of people seem to think it's basically the stupidest law school in the country. But, this woman is basically a loser who appears to be involved in a lot of nonprofit scamming. Now, I found this LinkedIn profile which said that she has a JD. Obviously, somebody could put whatever they want into LinkedIn. But my point is, I mean, we've known some stupid people, including Michael Cohen, who are able to obtain Juris Doctor degrees from bad law schools like Cooley. And it's true that she was employed as a magistrate. Now, when this says district court, this is very confusing as well. She is a state court appointee. She's an officer of the court as a magistrate. And I mean, you know, she could be dealing with traffic tickets and public urination. I mean, I don't know exactly how state court works in North Carolina, but, you know, people have a right to be annoyed with how the North Carolina judicial branch organizes itself and be outraged that someone with this low level of qualification could make a decision that results in a guy like this getting out. But I don't know that I'm going to try to dig in and see if we can find court records of exactly what it is that this woman made a decision about to let him go. And I'm not trying to make any excuses for her or him. My only point is, you know, this is the way our country is set up, where idiots like this can become, they can hold positions of power that allow them to make decisions that, you know, we're not living in a vacuum. This affects everybody, and it's a problem with justice in the United States.
Absolutely. I mean, speaking of idiots, I mean, we could also go through the excerpts from 107 Days and the recent revelations that job statistics under Biden were manipulated to turn a recession into, you know, a quotes Bidenomics and strong results. I mean, we have what recent history has shown us is that there's a shtick in place. There's a modus operandi that protects the people who are given power and allows people behind those politicians and officials to shape narratives, right? Harris's book is a case in point. You know, how the hell did she get a book written this quickly and promoted this? I mean, she was only been out of office, 8 months? You know, when was this book written? Did she begin working on it?
ChatGPT probably wrote it for her.
Yeah. But it's apparently the excerpts are going to cause a real dust-up between Biden people and Harris people because she's attacking Biden. But then on the question of these job statistics, you know, we called bullshit when Biden was president on all the stories about how the economy is improving and jobs are being created. They're just inventing these statistics out of whole cloth. And there are people like this judge and people like Claudine Gay and white and black people, and Hispanic people, I might add. It's not just a black thing, who are shaping narratives and doing so to the extent that you could fool people who watch Joe Scarborough, people who watch network news, people who read the Times, people who read the Wall Street Journal, have been fed utter falsity, not misinformation, not disinformation, but utter falsity, paid for, in many cases, subsidized or paid for by the U.S. taxpayer.
Yeah.
You know, that's the real story here.
Well, and just to get back to this magistrate for a moment, Charles, because I have been doing some more digging on her. And to back up what you're saying, in addition to adjusting these jobs numbers down, there's a lot of people who then go and say, oh, well, you know, we also want reparations and everything. But I found another LinkedIn profile for this magistrate, and this is interesting. So this one is still live. She was the deputy director at something called McMathis Counseling Services, which was registered in Michigan as a nonprofit. But, maybe she's not keeping up on her LinkedIn because it says that she worked there from 2008 through to the present. This thing here, again, it says she got a JD from Cooley Law School. This McMathis Counseling Center, it says it was dissolved in October 2013, but then I found some other information that it got, look at all these thousands of dollars in settlements. This was from the Michigan Attorney General. So somehow, 2 years after this corporation was dissolved, which, how does it even still have a bank account if it's dissolved? and it's collecting money from the Michigan AG in this record of settlements. I don't know exactly what it was for. Even stranger, McMathis Counseling Services continues to post on Facebook as recently as 2022, and this is the address in Lansing, Michigan, associated with its business registration. So I'm not exactly sure what the hell is going on with that. But there was another thing that I found where the magistrate, Teresa Stokes, she was more activity here in Lansing, Michigan. She got $20,000 from this 501c6, which is a business association, the Lansing Economic Area Partnership. So we're talking about reparations. I could use $20,000 from the city government. I've been paying lots of money to this municipality. This woman had a wing restaurant. This is Teresa Stokes, Wing Heaven Sports Haven. Got $20,000 to make chicken wings.
That's ridiculous.
Well,
does that thing actually even exist as a corporation?
The Lansing Economic Area. Oh, her chicken wing restaurant?
The chicken wing restaurant probably doesn't even exist.
I don't think it does anymore. Laura found the chicken wing restaurant, and then I was just looking up all kinds of things on the nonprofit front. So I don't know, but it got paid. It got this $20,000. It has an EIN right there. So I think it did exist at some point, but it's not a nonprofit chicken. It's not like chicken wings for the homeless or something. Yeah. It's just have some chicken wings.
Now, is Lansing, Michigan, is that where idiot Michael Moore is from? He's from Michigan.
Flint was his deal.
Flint, Michigan. Okay, yeah. So this, it is, I don't know how much more time we have, but this is a domestic example of what happens when governments get too much money. And in fact, none of these governments, North Carolina, Charlotte, Michigan, Lansing, the U.S. government, none of these governments are actually flush with cash. But this is what happens when trillions of dollars course through the system and there's no control. No control. I mean, we had Doge come in. People are yelling and screaming about cuts that are like 1% of the total problem. And yet you see that you've spent less than a day on this. And look what you find already.
Well, and now, Charles, if you cut 1%, there's going to be children who will starve in terms of chicken wings. We can't have that.
Exactly. Won't get their chicken. Won't be able to put mustard on their chicken wings or whatever you put on chicken wings. Right. No hot sauce. The outrage.
Yeah.
And then, the other thing to think about is that when these government officials mandate that an offender be sent for treatment, you need to check and see how the treatment center is operating, because it would not be surprising to me that treatment centers, homeless centers, whatever, drug treatment centers, alcohol treatment centers are given tons of money, but then they steal that money and they don't spend it on the person who needs the treatment. That would not shock me. And people who do that, if Teresa Stokes is one of them, people who do that need to rot in prison.
Well, that's the next thing that we need to talk about is that her wife, she's married, to a lesbian. We were looking at this Pinnacle Recovery Group is paying more than 10% of its gross receipts to Teresa Stokes as her salary. And so we don't really know what's happening there. We got a lot to discuss, Charles. I'm sorry to cut you off, but we are about to make our way over to the First Amendment Forum. I hope people will join us there on crowdsourcethetruth.substack.com. Not a 501c3, no tax exemption, no government subsidies to anything that I'm doing, but I hope that people will support the show. It costs me a lot of money to keep it going and do this research. People can also sponsor on subscribestar.com or patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth, or by following on X and subscribing to me at JG_CSTT. We have a whole other topic to go into as well, Charles, that I think is going to shed. I was looking, even at Politico didn't have the kind of analysis that I'm talking about on this, but I want to talk to you about what appears to be an extremely coordinated lawfare campaign here in the Washington, D.C. District Court that I think you're going to be able to give us some insights on how this is going to affect the Federal Reserve and, frankly, everybody. And this is how this kind of DEI permeation of the judiciary is really affecting everybody. So stay with us. We'll be back in less than 5 minutes. Thanks for watching.